Welcome to HB Reddit Stories. Today we will see stories of r/am I the a-hole. Am I the a-hole for yelling at my aunt after she let my parents see my kids? I'm 26 by and when I was 15 I was dating one of my soccer teammates who was an abusive POS who outed me to my homophobic parents after I worked up the nerve to leave him. They subsequently kicked me out and I survived in the streets for almost 2 years until my aunt found out about me when she came home from tour and took me in. She helped me get back in school and graduate and then to get in college. I met my wife there and we have twin boys, 4M. My dad found out he was dying of cancer. He and my mom having been trying to get back in touch with me to reconcile and meet their grandkids. I've rejected them so far even though my aunt urges me to try to reconnect. I told her no and I didn't even want them near my boys. Me and my wife went out for our anniversary Saturday and my aunt was watching the kids. My wife wasn't feeling well and we decided to call it an early night and I forgot to call my aunt before we got there. I pull up and I notice my parents' car. Confused we get out and go in and there's my parents playing with my sons in the living room. To say I was furious is an understatement. I immediately asked what the hell is going on. My wife tried to calm me down to no avail. She takes the boys to the car. My parents start talking about how they just wanted to meet them and I yell at them to get out. My aunt says I'm not being fair to them. That they've tried to apologize for what happened. I yell at her that it wasn't her place to let them and how it hurt seeing them. I yell at her about how our family basically excommunicated her when she came out. She starts crying explaining that they just showed up at her house. She starts saying she wished she made up with her brother, my dad, and my grandparents years ago if she had the chance and I'm being selfish knowing my dad is dying. I didn't know what to say after that and just left. My wife says I was being unfair to my aunt if they did just show up and that maybe my aunt's right. She also thinks I shouldn't have yelled at her like that after all she did for me. Am I the a-hole here? Top comments. Your aunt should not have let your parents in to meet your children even if they showed up unannounced. Just because someone is knocking doesn't mean they get entry. She could have told them that yes, she is watching your children, but it is not for her to be making unilateral decisions. And just because she wishes she had made up with someone is no reason for her to foist that upon you. That decision is yours and yours alone. Not the a-hole, and I am sorry this happened to you, it had to be very unsettling. Not the a-hole. No way they just happened to show up on the very night your aunt is watching them for you, and even if they did she should have said they couldn't come in without clearing it with you first. Next story. Am I the a-hole for setting boundaries and not letting a homeless girl I just met a few weeks ago sleep at my house, who I have been letting shower, giving her clothes, money, and food? I just met this 22-year-old girl about a month ago when she happened to pass by my house while I was chilling on my porch and needed help with a change of pants because it was her time of the month, if you catch my drift. Over the past few weeks, I have let her shower, I've bought/made her dinner, given her $20 for food, given her clothes, a coat, a backpack, an iPhone charger, and a set of headphones. She's come over to my house sometimes unannounced to hang out and use my Wi-Fi and chat. Unfortunately, she recently got kicked out of the shelter she was staying in for getting into a fight with another girl, so she is homeless. She met some random guy, who sells drugs, on the street and has been staying with him for the past week, but was unable to go to his place tonight. I didn't let her stay at my house because I don't know her very well and I don't trust her, especially because no one else will take her in, including friends and family. It's going to be cold tonight and she will spend it in an abandoned house. I feel like an a-hole. Am I the a-hole? Edit. About an hour after I kicked out the girl for the night and told her she couldn't stay at my place, someone, a male, I heard a man's voice, tried to break into my house. I filed a police report. I put security alarms on my doors and windows, I told her she can't come around anymore, and I'm installing a Ring camera. Truly terrifying. Thank you all for the advice. Top comments. As someone who used to be homeless, sleeping in abandoned houses, no clothes, no phone, no money etc., you are not the a-hole. What you've already done is incredibly generous. If she explicitly asked to stay at your house, I'd be a little wary moving forward. Keep those boundaries. You are right to not trust her fully, especially if no family or friends take her in. It's very possible she is on drugs. If that were the case, she still deserves help and housing, but you're not responsible for that. If you live in a decent enough sized city, there are probably a fair amount of resources for her. It's not always an easy process, but it's possible. In my experience of homelessness, I was strung out, so drugs came before the time and effort it took to utilize those resources. Of course, she may just be down on her luck, running from an abusive situation, or facing other mental health struggles. Regardless, you're still not the a-hole. I'll conclude by saying that when I was homeless, I was not always very appreciative of such acts of kindness, because I was on drugs and in a constant state of extreme self-pity, but I remember such acts today, several years sober and stable housing, and I'm incredibly grateful. You've already done far more than the average person does, treating her as a human rather than a feral animal. Keep your boundaries, and if you see her again and she asks to stay, point her to some local resources/shelters/outreach centers. Not the a-hole. I do social work for a living. I work with the unhoused population. One of my participants has been getting arrested for crimes relating to poverty since 1986. Multiple arrests a year for being homeless and having mental health issues. I adore her and do whatever I can to support her when she's wanting support, but that's about all I can do. She's been blacklisted from every shelter and program in the city for being mean as crap to people. And she's mean to everyone but me and one coworker. And I think she only likes us cause we buy her cigs and wings and just hang out and help her get an ID or deposit her social security check. Every time she declines help with housing, I feel like a monster. All I want is to help her get housing, but she has a lifetime of believing that the help isn't gonna really help. And I don't blame her for believing that or behaving in a way that is baffling to me. I keep trying to make my case and connect with her, but there's only so much I can do. Most of participants in my sub-program have such high degrees of trauma and neglect that I really don't know how healthy a relationship they will ever be able to have outside of someone like me. But goddamn, I'm gonna try my best still. You are not the a-hole. And I applaud you for helping someone who never gets a chance to be human be human. You are a wonderful person. Don't light yourself on fire to keep her warm, but do try and remain compassionate. Also, just be honest with her about your boundaries and the reasoning. Sugarcoating is the enemy. If someone can navigate homelessness and remain a person, that person is smart on some level, and you shouldn't try and coddle them. Just acknowledge and verbalize the elephant in the room in the most compassionate way you can, and the impact that you will have will astound you. Next story. Am I the a-hole if I don't want to go on vacation with my friends because they try to micromanage the expenses? I, 30M, have a group of 5 friends from university who are around the same age as me. For the past 2 years, we've gone on vacation together, first to Mexico and then last year to Egypt. We've always had a great time, and we get along well. However, when it comes to sharing costs, I find myself struggling. It's not the group that has an issue, it's me who has the problem. To provide some context, we all met at university 9 years ago and have been working for the last 5 years. Our university was ranked number 1 in the country at the time, though I no longer keep track of the rankings, and we all landed jobs just a month after graduation. I mention this to illustrate that we are all financially secure. I know for a fact that each of us earns between €80,000 and €100,000 annually. In terms of vacation costs, I typically spend around $3,000 for each trip, which is more than my friends spend since I'm more comfortable with spending. Additionally, I'm aware that the vacation money we receive amounts to at least double what any of them has spent on these trips. So this is the problem I have. Every night, they ask for a check, start checking off items for everyone, and then make that person pay exactly that amount. To me, that's embarrassing, getting nasty looks from the waitress who doesn't make in a day what these people make in an hour, waiting there for 10 to 15 minutes while they argue about who had what, and then starting to count bills and coins to pay. I suggested we split the bill 5 ways, but they don't want to do that. They have mentioned that I'm the only one who drinks alcohol with dinner and that it's not fair if they have to pay extra for it. We are talking about maybe €2. I even offered to pay more, but they still refused because some are not big eaters and don't think they should pay extra for others. It's 4 versus 1. To make matters worse, they spent every night comparing Uber bills because maybe I paid a couple of euros less for the ride. So now they are planning a trip for this year, and it could be the last one as some of them want to start families, but I'm thinking of saying no, I can't do this anymore. I enjoy our trips, but getting a pay request of €3 because I had a couple of glasses of rum someone else bought at the supermarket at our hotel messes with my mood. But I'm also the only one who has a problem with this, and I want to ask if I'm the a-hole or if this is just a really strange way to handle finances. Edit. People keep asking why we don't ask for separate checks, and the answer is that most places we visit refuse to split the bill into 5. Also, some people think I want them to pay for my drinks at dinner, but I have offered to pay for my drinks, even if we split the bill. Edit 2. People keep asking how drinking alcohol is only a couple of euros more expensive. It's because while I drink a beer or two, they drink Coke or some other soft drink. So, at the end of the day, I had 2 beers, and someone else had 2 Cokes. Yes, the beer is more expensive, but only a couple of euros compared to the Coke. Also, some people think I'm a big eater, but I'm not the biggest eater in our friend group. I take ADHD meds, and if you use those, you know what it does with your appetite. Also, my share of the bill is always one of the lowest unless we stay long and I drink more, but again, I offered to pay for those drinks myself. Edit 3. People keep asking why I don't pay the whole bill and then split it later. I suggested that we try it. But then that night, people started arguing about who had what, and there were items on the bill nobody said they had ordered. So they went back to do it at dinner so there would be no discussions about who had what. Top comments. What could save this is an app called TryCount. You could pay the full bill and then divide it up later at the hotel. Everyone tracks all expenses, and at the end you get an overview of how much is owed by whom to who. OP replies. I will write it down and give it a look. Thanks. You are the a-hole. You openly admit that you spend more than your friends as standard, you drink more, eat more, and choose more expensive things. But when it comes to paying, you think they should subsidize you by splitting evenly. Splitting the bill evenly when everyone ordered around the same amount is one thing, but it's always the one who eats the most and drinks the most who thinks an even split is fair. I'm little so I don't eat a lot, I also don't drink, why should I pay for someone else's meal? Edit. Seeing as everyone is saying the same thing at me. OP started out by saying he budgets higher than everyone else, and drinks when others don't, and that this was something that was brought up at the time. Backtracking, saying he spends less going out doesn't add up to his original statement of having a higher spend than the others. The telling fact is it was April 1st. They had a tighter budget, as OP stated, and only wanted to pay for what they had. Why would they do that if OP had a lower total overall? If that was so, then splitting would lower their total. They were on a budget and they didn't want to be overcharged. Next story. Am I the a-hole for requesting an explanation for my money being spent without my consent? This past summer I underwent a lengthy surgical procedure that required several weeks in the hospital out of town and several months follow-up. I needed to have someone stay and help me over those first 8 weeks, so I rented a large house on the water with a pool. I wanted those who came to help me to have an enjoyable environment. Friends and family offered to help and a schedule was made. Basically, people made it a vacation and met my needs while enjoying the amenities. My late husband's sister was the first to take advantage of the great setup. She stayed a week. She arrived while I was still in the hospital and then hustled out as fast as possible and left the day I was discharged. She didn't bother to visit me while in the hospital as she didn't like the traffic. Effectively doing nothing for me but enjoying the beautiful home and amenities. Prior to the surgery, I let her know that I was leaving $1,000 in the home to be used exclusively for items needed for the house, paper and laundry products and cleaning supplies. Also, any needs for my dog who would be at the house when I was discharged. Imagine my shock when I discovered she spent all of the dollar in 6 short days. Hurt and feeling used, I decided to table the issue till I was feeling better. As I was recovering, I was not texting or answering calls, phone was off. I needed all of my energy for my literal survival. There was no consideration for what I was going through and thus no communication from me. Weeks later, her husband made a feeble attempt to admonish me for not texting and calling her, to make her feel better. Sorry, not sorry was my response to this entitled one. Nearly 3 months later, I was back home and she came to visit. After a pleasant visit, I asked what made her think that it was okay to spend all of the money I had left for use at the house. She said she had given me receipts for her expenses. That is true. She began charging me before she left home. Body wash, breakfast, chewing gum, Then she stated she used it to stock up the kitchen. I asked for whom. Since it was bits of leftovers, for whom was she leaving these? She had several notes stating she used her own credit card and no receipt available, listing food and gas. She has an electric car. Then she stated that I had gifted it to her. I reminded her that I had not and my instructions. Then she stated it was her expense account. I asked why she thought she was entitled to an expense account and what made her think I would provide one. When I originally rented the house, she shared that she had been bragging to friends about her wonderful vacation planned at my summer rental. I fully realize that this bridge is burned, though I cannot imagine what difference it could make. Top comments. Not the a-hole for being upset at her callous behavior at your expense. If you want to wholly burn that bridge, feel free to warn your family about her behavior so they can all protect themselves or their loved ones from her selfishness and theft if they ever are in a similarly vulnerable position. Never leave sister-in-law unsupervised near anything of value, and don't worry about being generous to others other than her where she can see. She has already helped herself to her total share of your kindness, generosity, and consideration for others. Everything remaining can fairly only be given to others without guilt. She should be grateful that you haven't filed a police report for her theft. I think I would sue her. Ask yourself what Judge Judy would say to Your Honor. I rented the house for my aftercare and left $1,000 petty cash in the home for household expenses. My sister-in-law decided to come the week before I got out of the hospital, spent the whole $1,000, and told me I owed her for her expenses because she was only there for my aftercare. Before I got there and actually needed care. Even if I didn't win, the embarrassment she would feel would be payment enough. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share and subscribe the channel HB Reddit Stories.